Now, in a fresh announcement, the Taliban's Ministry of Higher Education has banned women from universities. As per the latest order, higher education will be suspended for women until further notice. Now, earlier such rules were enacted for gyms and parks, but now the Taliban has deterred women from pursuing studies. Here's more.
Taliban's crackdown on women in Afghanistan has yet not turned down. First parks, then gyms, and now universities. In a fresh announcement, the Taliban Ministry of Higher Education has banned women from universities. The announcement states that higher education will be suspended until further notice for women. Initially, the Taliban's stricter rules on women were only confined to public places such as gyms and parks. But the latest announcement has deterred women from pursuing higher education despite getting rigorous warnings from human rights bodies. Following the back-to-back crackdowns, the activist earlier predicted that the number of female students applying for university will fall dramatically in the coming years. Afghanistan education sector is badly affected after Taliban takeover. Before coming to power in Afghanistan in August 2021, Taliban promised to respect women's rights in accordance with their interpretation of Islamic law. Contradicting to what it said before, Taliban is seen bringing back the 1990 regime in Afghanistan. And the imposition of such suffocating restrictions over women has once again sought the global body's intervention. Agency report, Republic TV.
The U.S. State Department has in fact slammed the Taliban after the Afghan government banned women from private and public universities in Afghanistan. It is, of course, the latest edict that's cracking down on women's rights and freedoms, and it goes into effect immediately. Now, the United States State Department, of course, has issued a statement on this, saying that this is something that is not just regressive in nature, but it is against what the Taliban has promised earlier. Do remember that during its talks with the U.S. before the takeover of the Taliban actually happened in Afghanistan, the Taliban had ensured that it would not go back on women's rights and would make sure that women are not banned from colleges as well as from pursuing further education. Well, this, of course, has been in the making, many would say, because ever since the Taliban came back to power in Afghanistan, we have seen how they have continued to crack down on women's rights. First, of course, it was segregation of students in schools. Thereafter, of course, now this ban that's come in place for women. They've also, of course, banned women from going to gyms as well as parks. Now, the State Department has, in its first comment, said that this is regressive. It also goes on to say that Taliban have released 2 Americans. All right, now what we are given to understand is that it has, the U.S. State Department, of course, has slammed Afghanistan for doing this. However, we are still trying to access that statement. Now, do remember that despite initially promising a more moderate rule in women's and minority rights, the Taliban have widely implemented their harsh interpretation of Islamic law or Sharia. Now, the State Department, of course, has slammed the Taliban after the Afghan government banned women from private and public universities in Afghanistan. It is, of course, the latest edict that cracks down on women's rights and freedoms, and it goes into effect immediately. The decision was announced after a meeting of the Taliban government. Now, a letter, in fact, that has been shared by the spokesperson for the Ministry of Higher Education, Ziaullah Hashmi, tells private and public universities to implement the ban as soon as possible and to inform the ministry once the ban is in place. We are, of course, still trying to get you more details on what's happening, but reactions, of course, are beginning to come in. The United States has slammed the Taliban's regressive diktat right now. Let's listen into what Ned Price has said.
The Taliban's indefensible decision to ban women from universities, to keep secondary schools closed to girls, and to continue to impose other restrictions on the ability of women and girls in Afghanistan to exercise their human rights and their fundamental freedoms. The Taliban made promises to the people of Afghanistan and to the international community that schools would reopen. They claimed that this was a matter of procedures and arrangement and would be quickly reversed. Now, we hear the opposite. An order from the so-called higher education ministry yesterday states that women cannot attend universities either. With the implementation of this decree, half of the Afghan population will soon be unable to access education beyond primary school. Afghanistan is already losing more than $1 billion per year in contributions that women could be making to the economy. Now the Taliban have imposed these losses on the Afghan people for the indefinite future. Furthermore, the Taliban have permanently sentenced Afghan women to a darker and more barren future without opportunity. No country can thrive when half of its population is arbitrarily held back. Education is an internationally recognized human right, and it is essential to Afghanistan's economic growth and its stability. This unacceptable stance will have significant consequences for the Taliban and will further alienate the Taliban from the international community and deny them the legitimacy they desire.
Now, Ned Price over there, of course, saying that this is absolutely unacceptable. But the fact of the matter is that Taliban has been moving and denying women of their rights continuously ever since they came to power in Afghanistan. We have seen it bit by bit. Earlier, of course, they did say that there will be segregated education for boys and girls in the school. Thereafter, we saw them banning women from gyms and parks. And now this diktat that has just come in, which bans women from higher education. So essentially, that means that girls will not be able to study after getting primary education. Now, the US, of course, has slammed Afghanistan for coming out with this new decision. The decision, of course, comes into effect immediately. The decision was announced after a meeting of the Taliban government. Now, this comes despite initially, of course, Afghanistan and its government promising a more moderate rule and women's minority rights. However, the Taliban have now implemented their harsh interpretation of Islamic law or Sharia. They have banned girls from middle school and high school, restricted women from most employment and ordered them to wear head-to-toe clothing in public. Women are also banned from parks and gyms, of course. We are given to understand that the university ban comes weeks after Afghan girls actually took their high school graduation exams, even though they have been banned from classrooms since the Taliban took over the country last year. Now, we are given to understand that this is a move that has been opposed by various countries, but we haven't really seen the Taliban take back any of its decisions ever since it came to power. It has, in fact, continued with its horrific treatment of women ever since they came to power. So essentially, all girls in Afghanistan can only get education till the primary years, which would be about the age of 10 or 11. Thereafter, they are banned from middle as well as higher schools. They're banned from universities as well.